So I've started this new segment called Questions from the Community, and today's question is, and I have my little notebook here, how do you ask people to be on your podcast? So that is the question we're going to cover today, so let's get right to it. So the question of the day, or the question from the community, is how do you ask people to be on your podcast? And for me, there's just so many different ways that you could answer this. So I wanted to share with you, I have the top 4 tips to invite a guest onto your show. And the first one is you have to establish some kind of common ground. Like, that's number 1. Because if your podcast and this person and what they do, if they don't align, then the partnership or the collaboration or the team, like whatever you want to call it, like it doesn't make sense if I had a podcast about health and yoga and I invited someone who does eating competitions with cheeseburgers, right? Like it doesn't, like there's not a clear, like it's almost polar opposites of what you would want to happen. So the first thing I want you to do is to establish common grounds. And this could be the same audience, the same industry, the same business, but you have to establish common grounds somewhere in order to make sure that this guest is going to be a good fit for your show. Now, another way that you can do this is what I like to call people that collaborate in the same space, but they're not necessarily competitors. So for example, I'm a podcaster, I'm a podcast host, I'm a podcast educator, but I don't edit podcasts. Like, that is not a service that I provide to people, but I know a lot of podcast editors who do that. And I know some sound engineers, and I know some people that can help you with a podcast launch, and they can help you like manage all of your services and do your content marketing and all those things. I don't see those people as competitors. So I wanted to establish that first, is just because someone is within your industry does not make them a competitor. And honestly, I don't see anybody as a competitor. Even someone who does exactly what I do in this same space, I see that as an opportunity to learn from them, like learn their ways. Like, some of the things they do is probably way better than what I do, or maybe it's just very different, or maybe it's just a new approach. Maybe it's something that I should consider. So I want you to take that into consideration as people pitch you, or you want to go approach somebody. Just establish that common ground. First and foremost, do you have something in common, and what is that thing that you have in common? The other thing that I want you to think about is you need to have this done. There's actually a few steps you have to have done first, but you have to have this done before you pitch someone or you allow someone to pitch you. And when I say you pitch someone, it's like if you wanted to go on someone else's podcast, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you want to make sure that you have all of this figured out before you ever say, hey, I want to be on your podcast. I think we would be a good fit. We need to have that figured out. And that's why I want you to have a commonality with the person who is pitching to be on your podcast, because it's the exact same thing. Like, the process looks the same either way. It's just a matter of whether you're the one that's interviewing someone or you're the one being interviewed. So keep that in mind. The second thing I want you to consider is, how can this relationship or this interview benefit both of you? Now, if you are the person asking someone, like you're like, hey, I think that we would be great. I have this platform. I'd love for you to come talk to my audience. I want you to figure out beforehand, before you ever even approach them, talk to them, message them, DM them, whatever, I want you to figure out, how can your relationship with this person add value to them? Because remember, it's not about you. Like, it's never about you. And if it is, then you're doing something wrong, okay? Like, your podcast should be about adding value and serving people, to like adding value to your audience or anyone that you come into contact with. At least those are my principles. That is what I live my life by, and how I conduct and produce this podcast and this video show is all through serving other people. So I want you to, here are a few things to consider. You could give them access to your audience, which is what you're doing essentially. If you ask them to be on your show, then you're gonna publish the episode. So they're getting access to your audience in that way. Or you could do a Facebook Live and collaborate with them, or you could do some type of like Zoom interview, webinar, like where you showcase what they do, or you just have like a live chat, whatever. There are so many ways to give this person access to your audience, but that's one thing that you can consider and how this can benefit both of you. You can help them pitch their platform, their products, their services, whatever they have to offer. So how I set this up for my podcast is I just tell every guest, like I don't want them to wonder and assume if this is how it's going to go down. Like I explicitly tell them, hey, I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end of your segment to pitch whatever you want, whether it's your social media or if you have a free download, you have an event coming up, you have a book signing, whatever the case may be. I want you to promote your stuff because I have already vetted this person and I know that they're a good fit for my audience. So whatever they have to offer is going to add value to my audience. And it's just like a ripple effect of value. And I want to kind of elevate everybody at the same time, like raising the, you raise the tide, you raise all the ships in the harbor. So I want you to consider like, okay, how can I help this person promote their stuff that's going to help my audience? And in exchange, that makes me a more credible source to my audience. They're going to know me better. They're going to trust me more. And they're just going to be more invested in all the things that I'm doing. And then the last one, when it comes to benefiting both of you, is ask them to share your episode, the interview that you're doing together, with their audience. So if you are just getting started, you're a brand new baby podcaster, you're in the infancy stage of your podcast, and we'll call that 6 months or less, okay? Like you are still getting your feet wet, you're figuring things out, you're figuring out your processes and your systems, then I want you to seek people who have audiences bigger than you. This doesn't mean that you have to go after someone if you only have a small following of, let's say, 1,000 people. You don't have to go chase down the people that have millions of followers and they're the number one this and the number one that. I don't think that you have to do that. But if you go find someone who has 1,001 people, that's fantastic because that is more people than you have. That is more people. You would have never gotten exposure to those people had you not done this interview. But you have to make sure that you ask your guest, hey, can you share this episode with your audience? And tell them exactly what you want them to do. That's another thing, is you can't just assume that everyone knows, like, oh, well, when I say share this with their audience, they should just know that means to email their list and to put up 4 social media posts and talk about it in Insta stories and do this. And like, people don't know that kind of stuff. So you need to say it explicitly, either in an email or a message, however you're communicating with them, exactly what you want them to do. And most people are happy, like they're excited to do it, because if you deliver a great interview and you're adding value, then that value is probably going to translate to their audience as well. Because remember, we've already established that common ground. Okay, so just to recap, we've established the common ground, number 1. Number 2, we're considering how is this going to benefit both of us. And then the third thing is preparing your show guidelines. So this is something that I did early on in my podcast. And the only reason I did this, and this is going to make me sound kind of lame, but I did this that way I understood the podcast interview process. I really did. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything and that my interviewee wasn't confused and I wasn't confused on like the processes, what needed to happen and what went when and which time and which step. So I wrote down everything that needed to happen, and then I created my podcast show guidelines. And I actually have a template for you that you can download. Make sure you go grab it. It's going to be in the show notes of this episode. But basically what the show guidelines are telling your guest exactly what to expect. Where in my podcast guest guidelines, that's not even the right thing, my podcast show guidelines, I tell them, hey, I'm Krystal Proffitt. This is who I am. This is what my podcast is about. I give them a brief description and I say, this is what you can expect. You're going to receive the link to schedule your interview. I'm going to show you exactly how to set up the interview. And then I actually, just because this would make me feel better if I had never been on a podcast, I kind of do a rundown of what they can expect on the day of the interview. This is not a long document. It's 2 pages. That's all it is. It's very simple, but I found it very reliable. I guess that's the right word. I found it like just very calming for the people that get it. They're like, oh, this is how it's going to work. Because in theory, everything sounds super simple, but then you get to the day of and someone who's never done a podcast interview before, they kind of start freaking out. Like, wait, do you start? Do I start? How does this work? Do you introduce me? Do I put my bio? Do I tell you about myself? Like, there's just a lot of questions. So it's a way to kind of minimize the amount of times that you have to answer all these questions, but it also kind of just minimizes the back and forth. There's not emails back and forth like, oh wait, I forgot. Do we need to do this? Oh wait, I forgot. One more question. Like, you don't want your guests to feel dumb because they don't know these things, but you also don't want to get bombarded with messages back and forth because someone is confused. So you want to make it very clear with your podcast show guidelines, and make sure you go grab the sample that I've put in the episode description. Okay, so steps 1 through 3 need to be completed before you do any of this. Okay, like this is step number 4. So you have to do numbers 1 through 3. You got to set that common ground, establish the commonalities, whatever that is, how this is going to benefit both of you, as well as prepare your show guidelines. And then this is how you pitch someone, okay? Someone that you want to be on your podcast. You say, hey, here are our common grounds. This is how this episode can benefit both of us. And by the way, I have prepared my podcast show guidelines in case you have any questions. Do you see how much better that is than just emailing someone and saying, hey, you want to be on my podcast? That just makes me laugh saying it like that, because I have gotten some emails like that, and I've gotten some messages like that I don't even respond to. That's literally how it's like, hey, you want to be on I have a podcast. Do you want to be on my podcast? And there's just so many unanswered questions that I'm just like, is this legit? Is this spam? Who is this person? What kind of podcast? They didn't even put the name of their podcast in here. So how do I even know that like this is a real thing? So I want you to do steps 1 through 3, and then steps 4 is really to package everything together and make it look awesome. I want you to go above and beyond, because when you do that, you're adding value to your guest, which y'all know this. Value is so important to every step of the process. So when you add value to your guest, they're going to be excited about the interview. They're going to want to share it with their audience, and they're going to want to come back. Who knows? They may be one of your top raving fans after they've been on your podcast. And plus, when you take the time to prepare and do all of this beforehand, you are increasing the chances that someone's going to say yes. Especially if you're going after someone, like I said earlier, like I don't suggest if you're in the baby infancy stages that you should go after those huge mega people that you're like, I don't know if they're going to say yes, but I'm going to try anyways. I don't suggest doing that in the beginning. But if you are going to do that, doing all of these other steps it's going to get you closer to a yes. It's better than, hey, you want to be on my podcast, man? It's going to get you a lot closer if you take the time, you prepare, you do your research, and you just deliver amazing guidelines and lots of value and tell them, hey, this can benefit both of us. And I'd love to shine the spotlight on you. I'd love for you to spotlight your expertise on this podcast. So I hope you found this helpful, me explaining to you the 4 tips for asking a guest to come onto your show. If you like this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe below. Remember that you can go grab the sample podcast show guidelines in the link below this video, and make sure you come back every single Friday for our brand new podcasting videos, and you can actually check out some videos right here, and I will see you next time. So remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.